City. How you guys doing? NYC. So that's my Twitter handle if you guys want to show me a little bit of Twitter love. As Julian said, I'm the director of NYPrize and strategic advisor for Innovation at NYSERDA. That's the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority. If you pay an electricity bill in New York, you pay into a small systems benefit charge, and that's collected by NYSERDA. They fund the energy efficiency portfolio standard, the renewable energy portfolio standard here in New York. A lot of the big code generation systems that actually helped keep people up, like NYU during Sandy. The reason why NYU had lights during Sandy, partially because NYSERDA helped to subsidize that installation. But I'm not going to talk to you about NYU. As Julie said, I was kind of like the lean startup guy at the School of Engineering at NYU. What I'm going to talk to you guys about today is this first in the nation community grid competition, and some of what I think are like incredibly transformative things happening in New York. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here today to share this with Lucid, but also really because this is meaningful work for me personally, because I believe so strongly in protecting our environment and improving our energy future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to the future. I am going to talk to you about what's different now, why 2014 is incredibly different than any other year. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the new possibilities that are at hand, and hopefully you guys will actually be part of the solution and will seize those opportunities collectively. So I'm going to start by asking you guys to just kind of close your eyes for a second. So just close your eyes, all right? Imagine that you walked into a room and you saw electric lights for the first time. You can open up your eyes. So it turns out actually that Thomas Edison had his first electric generating station about a mile from here on Pearl Street, and that went online in 1882. And for a ton of people, like, it was a completely transformative reality. Right? They had never seen anything like it in the past. And the beautiful thing about what Edison did, if you actually like read up on this, was that Edison saw electricity as a platform. He did not see it as a commodity that in and of itself was going to transform society, right? Although lighting clearly was transformative. He saw it as a way to get people to use phonographs, which he invented, right? He saw it as a way to get people to use movie cameras, which he also invented, as a way to use batteries, which he also invented. So it was a platform for entrepreneurship. Electricity was a platform for entrepreneurship. And in his vision, he had these kind of small systems that would serve electricity, right, to a small group of customers. And oftentimes, those customers would receive the power that plant would produce, and they'd also receive the heat that plant would produce. So in many ways, it was decentralized, it was dirty, he was burning coal, and it was really expensive. But it was incredibly innovative. And the electricity grid was born here, right here in New York City. So we have the oldest grid in the world, like right underneath our feet. The other thing that happened, actually just a little bit before that, was that the Erie Canal was built. And if you read up on like the history of the Erie Canal, New York City would not be New York City if the Erie Canal was not built. And the thing that I love about the Erie Canal is that it was done essentially with like no federal help, right? People said it couldn't be done. It cost $7 million to build, which was a fortune when it was built in the early 1800s. But DeWitt Clinton, who was a governor, senator, congressman, war hero, he was like, we are gonna do this. And it completely transformed not just New York City, but America. Because at the time, the most expensive way to ship goods into like the interior of the country, into the Midwest, was to put it on a pack animal. And the max that you could transport was 250 pounds that you could strap onto the back of a donkey. So when you opened up the waterways, New York City started sending all their stuff up the Hudson, to Albany, and then from Albany out to Buffalo to the Great Lakes, boom, right? Just complete game changer. And New York really led, and it did it in a way where it did it without regards to other considerations of what other countries thought. It didn't wait around for the federal government to get their act together to support that. It was in many ways a local initiative, and that's a legacy that we have to draw on. I was talking to Tom before. You can call back a number of examples like this, but like, how many people know how instrumental Long Island was in the space race? Right? So New York has this tremendous legacy of innovation. We helped to put a man on the moon. It happened like 60 miles from here. It's actually incredible. And yet we have this incredible challenge as well, which is now we know what all the effects of all that transportation and industry is, and we actually have to do something to reduce our emissions 80% by 2050. That is a real significant goal, and we know what the results will be if we can't get there. I'm sure a lot of you guys were here during Sandy, as was I. I'm a native New Yorker. So we really need, to meet our climate goals, to get there, to get to 80% by 2050, we're going to need 3 to 4 times the current investment in renewables and in upgrading our grid. And we cannot get there by financing it on the back of all of you and myself, who are the electricity ratepayers. It's just, we are not going to get there. The math does not work. So how do we do that? I think that we work with and through markets. We have this aging energy infrastructure. It's struggling to meet increasing demand. The cost of just maintaining the status quo over the next 10 years is about $30 billion. It is a staggering cost. And the utilities ultimately need to be incentivized to change, but we also, I think, really need the private sector to step up. So it's not just a question, I think, of the infrastructure. It's obviously about people's lives. And when you look at the power outages that are not extreme weather related, they cost New Yorkers about $9 billion a year, and actually electrical outages are up about 285% over the last 30 years here in the US. We rank last out of all 9 major industrialized countries in terms of outage hours, which should be unacceptable to all of you, especially if you own a business or one of your loved ones is in a hospital or a nursing home or something like that. And electric rates for customers are just too high. 937,973 New York City residents received final termination notices in the first 4 months of 2014. It's way too much, right? And these are low-income New Yorkers who, because of the polar vortex and rising energy bills, could not afford to pay. It also caused a huge problem for Con Ed, about $740 million cash flow issue for Con Edison. Big problem. So how do we face that, and what are we going to do about it? Well, I would argue that part of the solution is local power, right? And the really interesting thing now in New York is there is a very unique alignment of people and policy who are putting clean energy front and center, who are looking at increasing the efficiency, the system efficiency of the grid, who are looking at giving customers more value and choice. So NYSERDA is part of that solution, the governor's office is part of that solution, the Department of Public Service, who regulates the utilities, are part of that solution. And ultimately what it comes down to is promoting more distributed energy at customer locations and kind of less large infrastructure that the utilities are incentivized to build because they get a guaranteed rate of return. So it's how do you kind of move the cheese and help incentivize them to offer more choice and value to all of you guys. And so what's happening now in New York is actually that we are restructuring the regulatory environment and our clean energy programs. If you're really into this, go check out the Clean Energy Fund proposal that NYSERDA issued like 2 weeks ago. It's a $5 billion proposal that hopefully will give people some transparency, longevity, and certainty in terms of how to actually scale renewables here in New York. And I'm telling you, this is happening now, and there is real buy-in from the top. There's also, again, this tremendous grassroots movement, and I think a lot of it is in response to Sandy. There are 66 New York Rising communities across the state. These are funded by the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery. People actually want to build, more distributed generation within their towns, and that's a really good thing. I was part of a program called Solarize Brooklyn. It was like me and a bunch of crazy neighbors who thought we could all install solar PV on our roofs. We thought we'd get like 20 people to sign up. We got 450 in Windsor Terrace and Park Slope, and Flatbush, and Kensington. And if you can actually do that, if you can aggregate demand, you can actually bring down the price for installed solar on your roof. So those are the kinds of things that are actually starting to happen. And so what we've done is we've tried to capitalize on this by launching NYPrize, which is this $40 million community grid competition. I'm going to kind of come back to that and define prize, but ultimately what we want to do is we want to fund feasibility studies, we want to fund design, which is kind of the next step after feasibility, and we want to help fund project build. So this is essentially what a microgrid looks like. It's not new. There's a number of different microgrids that are already up and running within the city. They are islanded in the event of a storm. They have a tremendous number of benefits, not just for the individual location, but for the grid as a whole. And the truth is that the biggest issue here is not technology, but it's actually regulation. And it's fixing some of the incentives around policy. It's not the technology. So let's just talk very quickly, because I only have a couple minutes left here, about some of the new possibilities at hand. So storm hardening, that's number one, right? Business as usual just does not cut it anymore. If you're building out distribution infrastructure in New York, it's going to be smart, right? It's going to be responsive, and it's going to be storm hardened. It's going to account for the new reality of climate change. As I say, there's just this tremendous regulatory shift. You probably don't follow utility regulation unless you're an energy geek like me, but I'm telling you, it's actually really cool. Like there is this woman, Audrey Zimmelman, who's the chair of the PSC. She's a serial entrepreneur. She speaks the language of the customer, and that is amazing. And what this is going to enable is transacted grids, meaning that not only will you just be able to consume energy like you've always done, but you'll actually be able to produce energy and be rewarded for that with cash. And that's kind of as American as apple pie. The other neat thing, I think, for kind of like the YouTube generation or anyone who's used Airbnb or any fans of the sharing economy here, is that now you can go onto a site like Solar Mosaic, and even if your own roof doesn't work for solar, you can invest in someone else's system. And I think this is really neat, right? The possibilities here for crowdfunding for renewable energy and local energy systems is really compelling. Who remembers phone cards, right? You guys remember prepaying for your minutes? Remember buying your minutes and you get the nights and weekends plan? Well, what if you could do that with energy? They're doing it in Texas, right? No good reason why, the grid doesn't peak at night or on weekends. So could you incentivize people to actually use more power during nights and weekends when the grid's not at peak? Potentially, right? Maybe. Two more things here. So, connected home, right? I grew up watching the Jetsons. We don't have flying cars yet, but we do have thermostats that talk to us. We have refrigerators that talk to us, other appliances, and it's not just your dumb old system anymore. In fact, one of the products that I love, and this is actually a company called Think Eco that came out of our incubator here in New York City, has this great program called Cool NYC with Con Ed. They let you change the temperature in your window air conditioning unit, which, by the way, huge problem in New York City. There's 6.2 million window air conditioning units in New York City. It's about 20% of our peak load. It's a massive problem. So, could you essentially enable your dumb air conditioner to be smart and help to maintain the reliability of the entire grid and get paid for it? The answer is yes. You actually can do that now. Go to Cool NYC, and, well, this summer wasn't so hot, but next summer I'll bet it's pretty hot. And then the last thing that I want to highlight is just kind of the falling cost curve of storage. Tesla is doing some really interesting things. They just announced their Gigafactory in Nevada, And it's not just going to be for using your car as a battery, right, to store energy during peak times, but it's also stationary systems that will be used in buildings potentially like this. And I think that's really transformative. And again, we've kind of come full circle with what we're seeing with entrepreneurs essentially leading the path forward. So I think that's it for me. Again, I close with this one only because, I'm not a huge fan of Ronald Reagan or anything. This is not a red state, blue state issue, right? This is about opportunity, this is about renewal, this is about job creation, this is about leadership. Thank you. Competition. And some of what I think are like incredibly transformative things happening in New York, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here today to share this with Lucid, but also really because this is meaningful work for me personally, because I believe so strongly in protecting our environment and improving our energy future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back to the future. I am going to talk to you about what's different now, why 2014 is incredible. NYSERDA, they fund the energy efficiency portfolio standard, the renewable energy portfolio standard here in New York. A lot of the big cogeneration systems that actually helped keep people up, like NYU during Sandy. The reason why NYU had lights during Sandy, partially because NYSERDA helped to subsidize that installation. But I'm not going to talk to you about NYU. As Julie said, I was kind of like the lean startup guy at the School of Engineering at NYU. What I'm going to talk to you guys about today is this first in the nation community grid. How you guys doing? New York City, how you guys doing? NYC. So that's my Twitter handle if you guys want to show me a little bit of Twitter love. As Julian said, I'm the director of NYPrize and strategic advisor for innovation at NYSERDA. That's the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority. If you pay an electricity bill in New York, you pay into a small systems benefit charge, and that's collected by different than any other year. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the new possibilities that are at hand, and hopefully you guys will actually be part of the solution and we'll seize those opportunities collectively. So I'm going to start by asking you guys to just kind of close your eyes for a second. So just close your eyes, all right? Imagine that you walked into a room and you saw electric lights for the first time. You can open up your eyes. So it turns out actually that Thomas Edison had his first electric generating station about a mile from here on Pearl Street, and that went online in 1882. And for a ton of people, it was a completely transformative reality. Right? They had never seen anything like it in the past. And the beautiful thing about what Edison did, if you actually read up on this, was that Edison saw electricity as a platform. He did not see it as a commodity that in and of itself was going to transform society, right? Although lighting clearly